I'm Kristen, 32 years old, and I used to think family dinner invitations meant love, not ambush. The shock on my face when my parents slid those loan papers across the maple table, their expectant smiles as fake as the world's greatest daughter mug they gave me years ago. After working since 16, paying off 50,000 in student loans, all by myself, while watching my brother Jason coast through life on my parents' dime, this was the final straw. They had no idea that before driving to their house, I had already purchased a one-way ticket out of their lives. I'm sharing this from thousands of miles away, but before I tell you how I finally broke free, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if family financial drama feels all too familiar. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Columbus, Ohio, I never questioned why my parents treated me differently than my brother. Jason was 4 years younger, and I always assumed the differences were because I was older or because I was a girl. Our house was nice enough, 4 bedrooms, in a good school district with a yard that Dad meticulously maintained every weekend. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, or at least that's what I thought. The first real taste of inequality came when I turned 16. While my friends got cars, or at least driving lessons from their parents, I got a lecture about responsibility and independence. "Kristen, we think it's important for you to learn the value of hard work," my mother explained one evening. "We've arranged for you to interview at Kroger this weekend. Mrs. Thompson is the manager there, and she owes me a favor." Within 2 weeks, I was working 20 hours a week as a cashier, after school, and on weekends. My parents made it sound like they were doing me a favor, teaching me life skills that would serve me well in the future. I believed them because, well, they were my parents. Why would I question their wisdom? Meanwhile, Jason was 12, and already being groomed for greatness. His football equipment was top of the line. His weekends were filled with travel teams and specialized coaching that I know now wasn't cheap. "Jason needs to focus on developing his athletic abilities," Dad would say proudly. "He has real potential for a football scholarship." When it came time for me to buy my first car at 18, I had saved up $3,000 from my grocery store job. It got me a used Honda Civic with 120,000 miles and a mysterious rattle that never quite went away no matter how many times I got it checked. I was proud of that car because I had earned it myself. 2 years later, when Jason turned 16, my parents surprised him with a brand new Ford Focus. Not a luxury vehicle, but certainly nicer than anything I could have afforded at that age. The excuse this time: football practice runs late, and we can't always be there to pick him up. He needs reliable transportation. As if my commitments had been less important. School supplies and clothes followed the same pattern. I learned to shop clearance racks and back-to-school sales, carefully budgeting the money I earned. Jason simply made requests that were fulfilled without question. The latest sneakers, the trendy jeans, the expensive graphing calculator that I had saved 3 paychecks to buy myself. Jason is at that age where fitting in is so important. Mom would justify when I dared to point out the disparity. "You've always been so mature and practical, Kristen. That's why we're so proud of you." Their praise was always about how independent and responsible I was, while Jason was praised for his achievements and potential. I didn't realize then that they had shaped me into the responsible one by giving me no other choice. During my junior year of high school, I overheard a conversation that should have been a red flag. I was grabbing a glass of water from the kitchen when I heard my parents discussing finances in the living room. "We should have enough for Jason's full tuition by the time he graduates, especially if he gets any kind of athletic scholarship to supplement," Dad said. "What about Kristen's fund?" Mom asked. There was a pause before Dad replied, "Well, we always planned for her fund to be more limited. She's already showing she can make her own way. Plus, with her grades, she'll probably get academic scholarships." I stood frozen in the hallway, the ice in my water glass, clinking accusingly. They had always told me they had college funds for both of us, just not how they were proportioned. I retreated to my room without letting them know I had heard, but something shifted in me that night. When senior year came around, and it was time for college applications, I threw myself into scholarship applications. I applied to 23 different scholarships, writing essay after essay late into the night after finishing my homework and work shifts. I won 7 of them, totaling about $8,000 for my first year. When I proudly announced my scholarship success at dinner, Mom patted my hand and said, "See, we knew you'd figure it out." Dad added, "That independence is going to serve you well in life, Kristen." Neither mentioned how much they would contribute. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, they looked uncomfortable. "We've set aside $12,000 for you," Mom said. "But that's really all we can manage with our other expenses." Those other expenses included a finished basement with a home theater system that was installed the same month, primarily so Jason and his friends would have a cool place to hang out. High school graduation should have been my moment to shine. I was valedictorian giving a speech I had worked on for weeks. My parents sat in the audience clapping at appropriate moments, taking the obligatory photos. But the celebration dinner afterward was cut short because Jason had a football scrimmage they didn't want to miss. "You understand, right, sweetie?" Mom asked, not really waiting for an answer. "This coach from Central State might be there watching. It could be such an opportunity for Jason." I nodded and watched them rush out, leaving me with a half-eaten slice of celebration cake and the check they casually suggested I could cover with some of my graduation money. As I prepared to leave for State University with my partial scholarship and the knowledge that loans would cover what my parents' contribution and my savings, couldn't I still clung to the belief that I was simply learning valuable life lessons, that someday all this responsibility would pay off and they would recognize my achievements with the same enthusiasm they showed for Jason's completed passes and touchdown runs. I packed up my old Honda myself, hugged my parents goodbye in the driveway as they wished me luck, and drove toward what I thought would be a fresh start. Little did I know, the patterns established in my childhood would only intensify as we all grew older. Walking onto campus that first day, I felt a surge of freedom and possibility that made my heart race. My dorm room was small, but entirely mine, or at least half mine, shared with a roommate named Alicia, who was from the western part of the state. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions without the shadow of my family's expectations. I could stay up late if I wanted to eat ice cream for breakfast or spend an entire Sunday reading novels instead of working. That fantasy lasted exactly 2 weeks until my first tuition installment payment reminder arrived. Despite my scholarships and my parents' contribution, I still needed to cover about $6,000 per semester, plus books, supplies, and living expenses. The financial aid office helped me secure student loans, but it quickly became apparent that I would need to work if I wanted to eat anything other than ramen noodles or have any kind of social life. I found a job at the university bookstore that gave me 20 hours a week. When that wasn't enough, I added 10 hours at a coffee shop near campus. My typical day started at 5:30 in the morning for the opening shift at the coffee shop, then classes, then an evening shift at the bookstore, followed by homework, until my eyes wouldn't stay open anymore. While my roommate and other friends on my floor went to parties and football games, joined clubs and made memories, I was measuring my life in 15-minute increments, maximizing every moment to maintain my grades while earning enough to survive. I couldn't afford to lose my academic scholarship, so sleep was often the sacrifice I made. My parents called once a week, usually Sunday evenings. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. "How are your classes going?" Mom would ask. "Fine," I'd say, too tired to elaborate. "Are you eating properly?" would be the next question, followed by, "Are you being careful with your money?" They never asked if I was happy or if I was making friends or if college was everything I had dreamed it would be. They certainly never asked if I needed anything. The few times they visited campus, they found fault with everything. My apartment was in such a rough neighborhood, even though it was standard student housing. My furniture from thrift stores was shabby, but they offered no solutions. They took me to lunch at chain restaurants, where they would scrutinize the menu prices before ordering and remind me not to order anything too expensive because money is tight. Meanwhile, Jason was finishing high school as the star quarterback with scouts from several colleges showing interest. When he was accepted to Midwest University with a partial athletic scholarship, my parents threw him a huge party. I couldn't attend because I had finals and couldn't afford the bus ticket home, but Mom sent pictures of the elaborate cake and decorations. 2 years after I started college, Jason joined the ranks of university students. The differences in our experiences became even more stark. One Tuesday evening during my junior year, I received a call from Mom. "Guess what? We just got back from setting up Jason's apartment," she announced, excitement evident in her voice. "Oh, I thought he was staying in the dorms," I replied mentally, calculating how much an apartment near Midwest University would cost. Well, he was going to, but you know how important his sleep is for performance, and he really needs his own space for focusing on football and studies. We found him this adorable one-bedroom just 10 minutes from campus. Your father and I co-signed the lease. "That's great," I managed to say, looking around my own cramped apartment, shared with 2 other girls to split the rent 3 ways. "We got him all new furniture, too," she continued, "and a new laptop for his coursework. The coach said all the players need good computers for reviewing game footage." I glanced at my own laptop secondhand and already showing signs of impending failure held together in one corner with duct tape. "How's he going to handle rent and expenses?" I asked, genuinely curious, since Jason had never worked a day in his life. There was a pause before Mom answered, "Oh, we're covering that. Jason needs to focus on football and school. The scholarship covers tuition, but we're handling living expenses." "The scholarship covers all his tuition," I couldn't help asking. "Most of it. We're picking up the rest. But it's an investment in his future. A sports career could really set him up for life." After the call ended, I sat on my bed and for the first time in years allowed myself to cry from the unfairness of it all. My parents had told me there wasn't enough money in my college fund yet. Somehow there was plenty for Jason's apartment furniture, laptop, and the rest of his tuition. That night marked a turning point in how I viewed my family dynamic. It wasn't that I was being taught responsibility while Jason was being babied. It was that they valued him more, invested in him more, believed in him more. The realization was both heartbreaking and liberating. I stopped expecting equal treatment and focused entirely on my own path forward. As my college years progressed, so did my student loan debt. Despite working 30 hours a week and maintaining a full course load, I had to take out additional loans to cover rising tuition and basic living expenses. By the time graduation approached, I was looking at $50,000 in student loan debt. My final semester was a blur of job applications, interviews, and final exams. I was determined to secure a position before graduation, knowing I would have no financial safety net. When I received an offer from a marketing firm in Chicago 2 weeks before graduation, the relief was overwhelming. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it was a foot in the door and included health insurance. Graduation day arrived with surprising weather, sunny and warm after a week of spring rain. I had maintained a 3.8 GPA despite my work schedule, graduating with honors. My parents attended the ceremony, arriving just before it started, and leaving immediately after to get back for Jason's spring football game. "We're so proud of you," Dad said, giving me a quick hug. "But we need to hit the road. Jason's game starts at 4, and we promised we'd be there early to help set up the tailgate." Mom handed me a card with a $50 gift card to Bed Bath & Beyond. "For your new place in Chicago," she explained. "Every little bit helps when you're starting out right." I thanked them with a practiced smile and watched them hurry to their car. $50 toward building a new life while they had spent thousands making sure Jason had everything he needed from day one of his college experience. That evening, I celebrated with my roommates and a few friends from classes, people who had seen my daily struggle and respected my work ethic. As we shared cheap champagne and reminisced about our college years, I realized that I had built something valuable after all. Not the family support I had always craved, but self-reliance that could never be taken from me. 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned into my still rattling Honda Civic and drove to Chicago student loan statements, arriving at my new address before I had even unpacked. The grace period would end in 6 months. The countdown to repayment had begun. My first apartment in Chicago was a studio on the North Side that could generously be described as cozy, but was more accurately tiny and overpriced. Still, it was mine, paid for with my own salary, and represented the first real space that belonged just to me. I furnished it with secondhand finds, Facebook Marketplace bargains, and a few strategic purchases from discount stores. The entry-level position at Marshall Marketing paid $42,000 a year, which sounded impressive until I calculated my take-home pay after taxes, health insurance, and retirement contributions. Once my 6-month student loan grace period ended, $600 would disappear from my monthly budget for loan payments. I created a spreadsheet to track every expense. Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, student loans, and a small emergency fund allocation left almost nothing for entertainment or new clothes, or an occasional dinner out. I packed lunches every day, found free events around the city for entertainment, and learned to cut my own hair from YouTube tutorials. 3 months into my new life, Mom called to discuss Thanksgiving plans. "We're expecting you home for the holiday, of course," she said, as if it were already settled. "Grandma and Grandpa will be coming, and Aunt Susan and Uncle Rob. The whole family will be there." "I'm not sure I can make it," I replied carefully. "I just started this job, and I don't have much vacation time accrued yet." This was partially true. I had only 2 personal days available. But the bigger truth was that I couldn't afford the $300 round-trip bus ticket home, not with my first student loan payment looming. "Surely they'll give you Thanksgiving off," Mom pressed. "It's family time." "I'll see what I can do," I promised, non-committally. 2 days later, I emailed that I wouldn't be able to make it home for the holiday. I spent Thanksgiving Day alone in my apartment with a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store and mashed potatoes made from a box mix, watching old movies on my laptop. When I called home that evening to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, Dad answered with a hint of disappointment in his voice. "We wish you could have made more of an effort to be here," he said. "Jason drove 5 hours after practice yesterday to make it home. Family should be a priority." What he didn't mention was that Jason drove home in the car they bought him, probably with gas money they provided to a guaranteed free meal, and likely some spending money to take back to school. The comparison wasn't fair, but neither was their expectation. During a family call around Christmas, which I also missed due to work obligations, Mom put me on speakerphone so everyone could say hello. "Kristen is working so hard in Chicago," she told everyone within earshot. "She's being very independent." Uncle Rob chimed in with what he surely thought was a helpful observation. "Well, if you chose a better career path, you wouldn't be struggling so much. Business majors are a dime a dozen these days." No one contradicted him or defended my choices. I heard Jason laugh in the background before changing the subject to his football team's recent victory. As my first year in Chicago progressed, so did my determination to free myself from debt as quickly as possible. Every bonus or small raise went directly to loan payments above the minimum required. I took on freelance graphic design work on weekends, taught myself new software skills through library books, and networked relentlessly at free industry events. In May, Jason graduated from college. I couldn't attend his graduation due to a work commitment I couldn't reschedule. In reality, I volunteered for the weekend shift because I knew I couldn't bear to watch my parents beam with pride and shower him with gifts while my own graduation had been such a footnote in family history. We got Jason a car as his graduation present, Mom mentioned casually during our weekly call. Nothing fancy, just a new Mazda to replace his Ford. He needs something reliable for job interviews. I bit back the observation that I had driven to all my job interviews in my 10-year-old Honda with over 180,000 miles on it. Instead, I congratulated Jason on his graduation and new car. 3 months later, Jason announced his engagement to Megan, his college girlfriend. My parents immediately began planning an elaborate engagement party and discussing their contribution to the wedding. "We've always set aside money for both of your weddings," Mom told me when I expressed surprise at their financial involvement. "It's tradition for the parents to help with wedding costs." This was news to me, considering every other financial tradition had bypassed me entirely. Jason's wedding the following summer was a lavish affair at a country club with 200 guests. As his only sibling, I was expected to be a bridesmaid, which came with expenses I could barely afford. The dress alone cost $300, not including alterations. Then came the bridal shower contribution, the bachelorette party expenses, and the wedding gift. I put most of it on a credit card, knowing it would take months to pay off, setting back my student loan repayment plan significantly. During the reception, I overheard my father talking to his brother near the bar. "We're helping them with the down payment on a house as a wedding gift," he said proudly. "Got them into that new development on the east side of town. It's the least we can do to help them start their lives together right." I excused myself to the bathroom where I sat in a stall, breathing deeply to fight back tears. The least they could do for Jason and his new wife was more than they had ever done for me. I returned to the reception with a fixed smile, danced when expected, and left as soon as it was socially acceptable. Back in Chicago, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. My performance reviews were stellar, and I was being given increasingly important accounts to manage. My immediate supervisor, Laura, became something of a mentor, recognizing my work ethic and attention to detail. During this time, I met Stephen, an architect who lived in my building. Our relationship developed slowly: coffee dates, becoming dinner dates, becoming weekend trips to nearby Michigan. He was kind and ambitious, with a close relationship to his family that both attracted and confused me. "Why don't you ever talk about your family?" he asked one night, 6 months into our relationship. I gave my standard vague answers about growing up in Ohio and having a younger brother, but Stephen sensed there was more. "You tense up whenever family comes up," he observed. "And you always have an excuse not to go home for holidays. What happened there?" That night, I told him everything. The unequal treatment, the financial burden I carried alone, the ongoing preferential treatment of Jason. Stephen listened without interrupting his expression, growing increasingly troubled. "That's not normal, Kristen," he said finally. "Families aren't supposed to play favorites that way." "Maybe I'm exaggerating," I offered, suddenly feeling disloyal despite years of evidence. "You're not," he assured me. "And it explains a lot about why you're so hard on yourself and so reluctant to accept help from anyone." Our relationship continued for another year, But eventually the strain of my financial situation became too much. Stephen wanted to travel to go out more, to build a life that included more than work and debt repayment. I couldn't match his lifestyle without compromising my financial goals, and I refused to become dependent on his support. We parted amicably, but his absence left a hollow space in my carefully structured life. 5 years after graduation, I reached a significant milestone. I had paid off half my student loans through disciplined living and every extra cent going toward the principal. I celebrated alone in my apartment with a slightly more expensive bottle of wine than usual, looking at the loan statement that showed $25,000 remaining instead of $50,000. The next day, I received a call from my supervisor. The company was opening a new office in Atlanta, and she was recommending me for a senior marketing position there. It would mean a significant raise, greater responsibilities, and a fresh start in a new city. As I hung up the phone, I felt a surge of excitement and possibility that I hadn't experienced since those first hopeful moments on my college campus. Perhaps a physical move would help me establish the emotional distance I needed from my family's expectations and disappointments. I accepted the position without consulting. My parents signed a lease on an apartment site, unseen, except for virtual tours, and prepared to relocate to Atlanta. My old Honda finally gave up the ghost just before the move, forcing me to purchase a used Toyota with low mileage that I hoped would last through the next phase of my life. As I packed up my Chicago apartment, I came across the Bed Bath & Beyond gift card my parents had given me at graduation. I had never used it, saving it for some imagined future emergency. The $50 my parents had contributed to my adult life sat unused in a drawer, a perfect metaphor for their minimal investment in my success. Atlanta welcomed me with its humid warmth and surprising greenery. My new apartment was significantly nicer than my Chicago studio, a one-bedroom with actual living space and a small balcony overlooking a courtyard. The promotion came with a 20% salary increase, pushing me into a new tax bracket and allowing me to accelerate my debt repayment plan. The first few months were consumed with learning my new role, establishing relationships with clients and team members, and exploring my new city. I joined a running group that met on Saturday mornings in Piedmont Park, finding community among strangers who gradually became friends. My contact with family dwindled to monthly calls and obligatory holiday check-ins. I sent gifts for Christmas and birthdays ordered online and shipped directly to avoid the need to visit. My parents rarely initiated contact unless they had news to share about Jason or needed to confirm my attendance at some family function I would ultimately decline. Jason and Megan are expecting, Mom announced during one such call, her voice bubbling with excitement. You're going to be an aunt. We're going to be grandparents. That's wonderful news, I replied, genuinely happy for my brother, despite our complicated relationship. When is she due? July. So, right in the middle of summer. We're already planning to help them convert the home office into a nursery. Your father is talking about taking a week off work to paint and put furniture together. I remembered painting my own Chicago apartment alone, assembling discount furniture from instructions that seemed written in a foreign language but pushed the memory aside. That's really nice of you, I said instead. Well, that's what family does, Mom replied without a hint of irony. We support each other. Tyler James was born on July 10th, a healthy 8-pound boy with Jason's chin and Megan's eyes, according to the flood of photos that arrived on my phone. I sent an expensive baby gift basket and a handwritten card promising to meet my nephew soon when work allowed. My parents became devoted grandparents immediately. Their conversations now revolved entirely around Tyler's developments, the cute things he did, and how he was clearly advanced for his age group. They drove to Jason and Megan's house every weekend babysitting, so the new parents could have date nights, bringing elaborate gifts just because, and documenting every moment with photographs they shared in family group texts. 8 months after Tyler's birth, I received a tense call from Mom. Jason lost his job, she said, without preamble. The company downsized his entire department. They're worried about making mortgage payments with the baby and everything. That's tough, I said, genuinely sympathetic. Job loss was a fear that lingered in the back of my mind as well. Does he have any prospects lined up? He's looking, of course, but the job market isn't great right now. Your father and I are helping them out temporarily. We're covering their mortgage for a few months until he finds something. I did quick mental math. Jason and Megan's house was in an upscale neighborhood, which meant their mortgage was likely at least $2,000 per month. My parents were casually covering this expense temporarily, while I had been left to manage $50,000 in student loans on my own. That's really generous of you, I said carefully. It's what parents do, Mom replied. We can't let them lose their house, especially with Tyler. Family has to stick together during hard times. I wanted to ask where this family solidarity had been when I was eating ramen for days straight to make rent while working 2 jobs and maintaining a full course load. I wanted to point out that I had faced hard times alone while Jason was being cushioned from the consequences of life's uncertainties. Instead, I wished Jason luck with his job search and changed the subject. Despite my family situation, or perhaps because of it, my career continued to flourish. I threw myself into projects, volunteered for challenging assignments, and built a reputation as someone who could handle difficult clients and impossible deadlines. My annual review came with another raise and a small team of junior marketers to supervise. When I led a campaign that landed a major national client, doubling our Atlanta office's revenue projections, I called my parents with the news, allowing myself a moment of hope that they might finally express pride in my achievements. That's nice, dear, Mom said distractedly. Listen, can I call you back? We're at Tyler's swim lesson, and he's about to go in the pool. I don't want to miss it. Sure, I said, the excitement deflating from my voice. No problem. She never called back. 3 months later, I made the final payment on my student loans. 8 years after graduation, after thousands of hours of work beyond my salaried position, after sacrificing vacations and comfortable living and relationships, I was finally free of educational debt. I sat alone in my apartment that evening, the confirmation email from the loan servicer displayed on my laptop screen. There was no one to celebrate, with no one who truly understood the mountain I had climbed alone. I opened a bottle of champagne I had been saving for a special occasion, poured a single glass, and toasted myself in the mirror. You did this, I told my reflection. All on your own. The next day, an email arrived from my father with the subject line, Urgent Family Matter. The body contained only a request to call home as soon as possible. My stomach dropped immediately, assuming someone was ill or injured. I called during my lunch break, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Dad, what's going on? Is everyone okay? Everyone's fine, he assured me. But we need to have a family discussion, and it's best done in person. Can you come home next weekend? What's this about? I pressed, unwilling to commit to a cross-country trip without more information. It's about Jason and his family. They're facing some challenges, and we need to discuss how we can all help as a family. The phrasing sent warning signals through my brain, but concern for my brother and his young family overrode my caution. I suppose I could fly in Friday night and leave Sunday, I said reluctantly. But I can't stay longer than that. Work is really busy right now. That's perfect, Dad said, sounding relieved. We'll have a family dinner Saturday evening. Your mother will be so pleased you're coming. After ending the call, I sat at my desk feeling uneasy. Years of experience had taught me that family discussions usually meant expectations would be placed on me while accommodations would be made for Jason. Still, I couldn't refuse without seeming callous, especially if my brother was truly in need. I called my friend Rachel that evening, seeking an outside perspective. "This sounds suspicious," she said after I explained the situation. "They're deliberately being vague about what kind of help they want from you." I know I sighed. But what if it's something serious? I would feel terrible not going. "Then go," Rachel advised, "but have an exit strategy. Book your return flight for right after the dinner if possible. Don't stay overnight after whatever this discussion is supposed to be." Her suggestion made sense. I changed my original booking to a Saturday morning arrival and a red-eye flight Saturday night immediately after dinner. The change fee was worth the peace of mind of knowing I had an escape route. As I confirmed the new flights, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a situation I would regret. Years of family dynamics had taught me to expect disappointment, yet some lingering sense of obligation kept pulling me back into their orbit. The flight to Ohio was smooth, but anxiety knotted my stomach as the plane descended. I hadn't been home in nearly 3 years, making excuses about work commitments to avoid holidays and family gatherings. What was I walking into? And why did it require my physical presence when a phone call would have sufficed? The rental car crunched up the familiar gravel driveway of my childhood home. From the outside, nothing had changed. The same blue shutters, the same carefully maintained lawn, the same ceramic frog by the front steps that had been there since I was 10. But as I cut the engine and sat for a moment, gathering my courage, I felt like a stranger approaching unfamiliar territory. I wheeled my small overnight bag to the front door and hesitated before ringing the bell. This had been my home for 18 years, yet now I stood on the porch feeling like a visitor, which I supposed I was. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed genuine if a bit nervous. "Kristen, you made it." She pulled me into a hug that I returned stiffly. Come in, come in. Your father is in the kitchen." "We weren't sure which room to put you in since we converted your old bedroom to a home gym years ago, so we made up the guest room." I followed her inside, noting the new furniture, the fresh paint, the updated fixtures. They had clearly done significant renovations since my last visit. The home gym conversion was news to me, though not surprising. My childhood had been systematically erased from this house, one room at a time. Dad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "There she is," he exclaimed, giving me an awkward side hug. "The big city marketing executive. How was your flight?" "Fine," I replied, setting down my bag. "Uneventful." "Good, good. Well, dinner won't be for a few hours yet. Jason and his family will be here around 5. Can I get you something to drink? Water, coffee? We have that fancy, sparkling water you like." I didn't recall ever expressing a preference for sparkling water to my parents, but I accepted the offered beverage and followed them to the living room. The conversation was painfully superficial, touching on the weather in Atlanta, my parents' recent landscaping projects, and a neighbor's new boat. No one mentioned the urgent family matter that had brought me here. At precisely 5 o'clock, the front door opened without a knock, and Jason's voice called out, "We're here." My brother appeared in the living room doorway, looking much the same as I remembered him, perhaps with a bit less hair and a slight thickening around the middle. Behind him was Megan, holding Tyler, now a toddler, with curly hair and curious eyes. Kristen, Jason's surprise seemed genuine. "I didn't know you were coming. What a great surprise." His reaction confirmed my suspicion that this urgent family meeting had been framed differently to different participants. Megan stepped forward with a warm smile. "It's so good to see you. It's been ages, and you haven't even met Tyler yet." I stood and greeted them, making appropriately enthusiastic noises about how big Tyler had grown and how much he looked like both of them. The little boy regarded me with understandable wariness, hiding his face against his mother's shoulder when I tried to say hello. "He's just shy with new people," Megan explained apologetically. "He'll warm up over dinner." Mom swept in immediately, taking Tyler from Megan's arms. "There's my big boy. Did you miss Grandma? I bet you did. I got a new truck for you to play with. Want to see?" Dad was already slapping Jason on the back, pulling him toward the kitchen. "Come see the new grill. Got it last month and it's a game changer. 6 burners and a side smoker." The familiar choreography played out as I stood awkwardly in the living room, neither parent thinking to include me in either conversation. Megan at least had the grace to look embarrassed, hanging back to chat with me while the others disappeared. "They're always like this when we visit," she said quietly. "It's a bit much, sometimes, but they mean well." I nodded, not trusting myself to comment further. Dinner was served at 6, an elaborate spread that featured all of Jason's favorites. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes, dinner rolls from the bakery he had loved as a teenager, green bean casserole with the fried onions on top. I noticed there wasn't a single dish that had been my preference growing up. No stuffed peppers, no pasta primavera, none of the vegetable-heavy dishes I had always favored. The conversation revolved entirely around Tyler's developmental milestones, Jason's job search, and my parents' plans to take the family to Disney World the following spring. "You should come too," Kristen Mom said, as if suddenly remembering I was there. "If you can get away from work that island. We know how busy you are." "Thanks for the invitation," I replied non-committally. "I'll have to check my schedule when you have dates." Tyler grew restless as the meal progressed, fussing and refusing to eat more than a few bites of mashed potatoes. "I think someone's ready for a little break," Megan said, standing. "I'll take him upstairs to play for a bit. He has some energy to burn before dessert." "I'll help you," Mom offered, immediately already out of her seat. As soon as they left the room with Tyler, a noticeable shift occurred in the atmosphere. Dad cleared his throat and shared a meaningful look with Jason, who suddenly became very interested in rearranging the food on his plate. Kristen, Dad began his voice taking on the formal tone he used for serious discussions. "Now that we have a moment, we wanted to talk to you about that family matter I mentioned." "I'm listening," I said, setting down my fork and looking between them. "As you know, Jason has been between jobs for a while now," Dad continued. "He's had some promising interviews, but nothing has quite worked out yet. The right opportunity takes time." Jason nodded soberly. "The market is tough right now, really competitive." Meanwhile, Dad pressed on. "They've been getting by with our help and Megan's part-time work, but they're facing some decisions about Tyler's future." Mom returned at that moment conspicuously without Megan and took her seat. She pulled a folder from beneath a serving dish where it had apparently been hidden all along. "Tyler is incredibly bright," Mom said, picking up the conversation seamlessly. "His preschool teacher says he's advanced for his age, especially verbally and with problem solving." "That's great," I said cautiously. "There's this wonderful private school," she continued, opening the folder and sliding some glossy brochures across the table. "The Franklin Academy. It goes from preschool through 12th grade, so he could have educational continuity. Their early childhood program is exceptional." I glanced at the brochures featuring smiling, diverse children in uniforms, modern facilities, and impressive statistics about college placement. The tuition rates were noticeably absent from the promotional materials. "Sounds nice," I offered, still not understanding my role in this discussion. Dad leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "The thing is, with Jason's employment situation, they can't qualify for the tuition loan on their own right now. And Megan and Jason feel strongly that Tyler should start there this fall to get the best possible foundation. I felt a cold sensation spreading through my chest as the purpose of this gathering became clear. The tuition is $38,000 a year, Mom said, sliding another paper across the table. Not a brochure this time, but loan paperwork. We would cover it ourselves, but with retirement coming up and your father's knee replacement scheduled, we just can't take on more debt right now. What exactly are you asking? I said, though I already knew the answer. We need you to co-sign the loan, Jason said, speaking up for the first time. Just temporarily until I get back on my feet with a new job. Your credit is so good now, and you don't have student loans anymore. I stared at him wondering how he knew about my loan repayment status when I hadn't shared that information with my family. We keep an eye on these things, Dad explained, reading my expression. We're proud of how responsible you've been. Just until Jason's job situation improves, Mom added quickly, It's for Tyler's education. Surely you want what's best for your nephew. You don't even have kids to spend money on, Jason said, with a hint of the entitlement that had characterized our entire relationship. And your career is going so well. This is really important to us. My mind flashed through a slideshow of memories. Working night shifts at the grocery store while Jason played video games. My ancient laptop held together with tape while Jason received a new one because he needed it for school. Paying my own way through college while they covered all his expenses. The decades of unequal treatment that had taught me I was less valued, less worthy of investment and support. After all we've done for you, Mom said, softly pushing a pen across the table in my direction. Family helps family. That's what we've always taught you, kids. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind that comes with absolute clarity. I need to use the bathroom, I said, standing up. Excuse me for a minute. In the hallway bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, taking deep breaths. Then I pulled out my phone and checked my flight details. Still 3 hours until departure. Plenty of time. I checked my rideshare app. Several cars available within a 10-minute radius. I booked one scheduled to arrive in 15 minutes, then splashed water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. You don't owe them this, I whispered to my reflection. You don't owe them anything. I returned to the dining room where 3 expectant faces turned toward me. The pen still lay where Mom had placed it beside loan papers for an amount that exceeded my annual salary when I had graduated college. I need to think about this, I said carefully. It's a big commitment. Their faces fell in synchronized disappointment. What's there to think about? Jason asked. It's for Tyler. I just need some time, I insisted. I'm going to get something from my car. I'll be right back. I walked out the front door with my purse, leaving my overnight bag behind. The rideshare was already turning into the driveway earlier than expected. Without hesitation, I got in the back seat. Airport, please, I told the driver, not looking back at the house where I knew they would soon realize I wasn't coming back. The drive to the airport passed in a blur of suburban landscapes giving way to highway. My phone began buzzing with texts about 20 minutes after my departure, but I silenced it and stared out the window, instead watching Ohio slip away once again, this time with a sense of finality. At the airport, I moved through security in a daze, finding my gate and sitting with my back to the wall, half expecting my family to appear in pursuit. They didn't. The boarding process, the taxiing, the takeoff, all happened in a strange, disconnected state where I felt simultaneously numb and hyper-aware of my surroundings. It wasn't until the plane reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turning off with a cheerful ding, that the reality of what I had done hit me. I had walked out on my family left without explanation, after they had flown me across the country, specifically to ambush me with their financial demands. The sheer audacity of their expectations struck me anew, and I found myself smiling slightly at the memory of their shocked expressions that would surely have followed my exit. I turned off my phone completely for the duration of the flight, unwilling to deal with the inevitable fallout until I was safely home. The red-eye journey left me exhausted but resolute as I finally unlocked the door to my Atlanta apartment in the early hours of Sunday morning. Home. My space bought and paid for with my own hard work, where no one could make demands or judgments or comparisons. I slept for 12 hours straight, waking in the afternoon to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, and the knowledge that I would need to face the aftermath of my actions eventually. With a deep breath, I turned on my phone. The barrage was immediate and overwhelming. 15 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, 3 voicemails from Jason, dozens of text messages ranging from confused to concerned to angry. "Where did you go? Are you okay? Call us immediately, we're worried. I can't believe you would just leave like that. This is incredibly disrespectful, Kristen. After everything we've done for you. Tyler is crying, asking where his aunt went. You're being incredibly selfish right now. We flew you out here, and this is how you repay us. Family means being there for each other, not running away." The progression was predictable, starting with concern that quickly gave way to guilt trips and accusations. I listened to the voicemails, each more agitated than the last. "Kristen, it's Mom. Where are you? We're worried sick. Please call us immediately." "Kristen, this isn't funny. Your father is very upset. Call home now. I can't believe you would do this to us, to Tyler. This is not how we raised you. Call me back." I deleted them all and put my phone on silent, needing more time to process before responding. For the rest of Sunday, I focused on self-care. I ordered delivery food, watched mindless television, and tried to prepare mentally for the work week ahead. On Monday, I returned to the office as if nothing had happened, throwing myself into projects and meetings that required my full attention. My phone continued to accumulate notifications, but I ignored them all. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in similar fashion. By Thursday, the tone of the messages had shifted from anger to threats. "If you don't call us back, we're going to contact the Atlanta police for a wellness check. This is not acceptable behavior. Your brother is considering coming to Atlanta to find you, since you're clearly not mature enough to have a simple conversation. Is this really the hill you want to die on, Kristen refusing to help your nephew get a good education? What kind of person does that make you?" The manipulation was so transparent now that I had some distance from it. I finally responded with a single text to the family group chat. "I am safe and well. I need space right now. Please respect that." This only fueled their outrage, prompting another flood of messages about family obligation, respect for parents, and how I was breaking my mother's heart. After a week of this escalating emotional warfare, I made a decision. I changed my phone number. The silence that followed was both strange and liberating. I knew they could still reach me through email or my work contact information if there was a genuine emergency, but the constant barrage of guilt and manipulation was finally cut off. 2 weeks after the dinner incident, I sat down and composed a careful email to my parents. I didn't let emotions dictate the content, instead, calmly explaining my perspective on years of unequal treatment and unfair expectations. "The pattern has been clear my entire life," I wrote. "Jason receives support opportunities and financial backing while I am expected to fend for myself. When I succeed despite the lack of help, my achievements are minimized while Jason's are celebrated. Now you've asked me to take on significant financial risk for his child's education when none of you were willing to do the same for mine. This isn't about Tyler, who I care for deeply, despite having met him only once. This is about a fundamental imbalance in how you view your children and your responsibilities toward them." I ended the email with a request for time and space. to reconsider my relationship with them going forward, making it clear that I wasn't severing ties completely, but needed boundaries. Their response came within hours, a joint email, signed by both parents, that confirmed everything I had come to understand about our family dynamic. "We're deeply hurt by your accusations," they wrote. "You've always been jealous of Jason's achievements and the special bond we share with him. We gave you everything you needed growing up, teaching you independence and responsibility, which has clearly served you well in your career. If you choose to interpret our parenting as favoritism, that's your issue to work through. We hope you'll reconsider your position on helping Tyler, who is innocent in all this." Not a single acknowledgement of the disparities I had pointed out. Not one moment of reflection or consideration that their treatment might have been unfair. Just deflection, denial, and another attempt to manipulate me through guilt. I didn't respond. In the weeks that followed, I found unexpected support in an online forum for adult children navigating difficult family relationships. Anonymously sharing my story led to dozens of comments from people who had experienced similar treatment, many of whom had eventually limited or ended contact with their families for their own well-being. Their stories helped me feel less alone, less like I was overreacting or being unreasonable. 3 months after the dinner incident, a job posting caught my eye. The company was looking for a marketing director for their Pacific Northwest operations, based in Seattle. It would mean another move, another fresh start, and even more physical distance from Ohio. I updated my resume and sent in an application that evening. 2 interviews and 1 in-person visit later, I was offered the position with a substantial salary increase and relocation package. I accepted without hesitation, giving notice at my Atlanta job, and beginning the process of dismantling my life there to rebuild it across the country. I didn't inform my family of my move. The distance between Atlanta and Ohio had been significant enough, but the distance between Seattle and Ohio felt like a statement in itself. I was literally putting an entire continent between us. The process of disappearing from my family's radar was surprisingly simple. I closed all social media accounts they had access to, creating new private ones under a variation of my name. I updated my contact information with banks, medical providers, and other institutions, adding passwords and security questions they wouldn't be able to guess. I instructed my company's HR department not to provide any personal information to anyone claiming to be family without my explicit permission. 6 months passed without contact. I settled into Seattle, finding an apartment with a view of the mountains, making new friends through work and a local hiking group, establishing routines that felt healthy and sustainable. For the first time in my life, I began to truly thrive without the shadow of family expectations clouding my achievements. And then, just as I was beginning to believe I had successfully extricated myself from the toxic family dynamic, a Christmas card arrived at my new address. The front featured a professional photo of my parents, Jason, Megan, and Tyler, all wearing matching holiday sweaters and forced smiles. Inside was a pre-printed update about Tyler starting preschool, not the private academy I noted, and Jason finding a new job. At the bottom, in my mother's handwriting, was a brief personal note: "To family members near and far, Christmas is a time for forgiveness and coming together. We miss you and hope you'll find your way back to us soon. Love, Mom and Dad." No acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no apology, just an expectation that I would eventually fall in line with their version of family harmony. I returned the card unopened, writing, "Return to sender no such person at this address" on the envelope. A week later, an unexpected email arrived from Megan, separate from the family account. "Kristen, I know we've never been close, but I wanted to reach out. I understand more than you might think about the dynamics at play here. What happened at that dinner wasn't right. Jason and your parents don't see it, but I do. I'm not asking you to respond or to change your mind about anything. I just wanted you to know that at least one person recognizes the position you were put in. Take care of yourself. I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to respond to find an ally in the most unexpected place. But the larger part of me recognized that any response would potentially open a door I wasn't ready to reopen. I saved the email, but didn't reply. When the 1-year anniversary of the dinner ambush came around, I took the day off work and hiked to a viewpoint overlooking Puget Sound. Sitting on a rock watching ferries cross the water under a clear autumn sky, I reflected on everything that had changed in 12 months. I had a new home, new friends, a thriving career, and most importantly, a sense of peace I had never experienced while entangled in my family's expectations. I had chosen myself finally, after a lifetime of being the afterthought in my own family narrative. The guilt that had initially followed my escape had faded, replaced by a quiet certainty that I had made the necessary choice for my own well-being. 2 years after leaving that fateful dinner, my life in Seattle had taken on a richness I never imagined possible. My career had accelerated beyond my expectations, with my marketing campaigns winning industry recognition and my team expanding to handle our growing client base. The company's trust in my leadership translated to autonomy and respect that fueled my confidence in both professional and personal realms. My apartment, once a sparse refuge, had transformed into a true home filled with books, art, collected from local artists, and comfortable furniture chosen purely for my own enjoyment rather than affordability. The view of Mount Rainier on clear days still took my breath away, a daily reminder of the beauty that existed beyond the narrow confines of family obligation. More precious than material comforts were the friendships I had cultivated. My hiking group had become a consistent source of weekend adventure and laughter. My neighbor Elena, a professor of literature at the local university, regularly invited me for dinner and thoughtful conversation. My colleague David and his husband Michael included me in their holiday celebrations and summer barbecues. These connections were different from anything I had experienced before. They were chosen, freely maintained with mutual respect and genuine interest, unburdened by history or obligation. For the first time, I understood what healthy relationships could feel like when not shadowed by comparison or conditional love. 6 months into therapy with Dr. Lin, I had begun to untangle the complex web of family dynamics that had shaped my self-perception and behaviors. What you experienced is called financial favoritism. Dr. Lin explained during one particularly insightful session. It's a form of differential treatment that can have lasting effects on children, even into adulthood. The practical impact of your parents financially supporting your brother while expecting you to struggle alone sent a clear message about your respective values in the family system. I always thought I was just being taught responsibility. I admitted the rationalization still lingering, despite my intellectual understanding of the unfairness. That's the narrative they gave you, she nodded. And children naturally try to make sense of their experiences in ways that don't require them to see their parents as unjust or unloving. But look at the evidence objectively. Would truly loving, fair parents create such dramatically different circumstances for their children? These therapy sessions helped me recognize patterns I had internalized. My workaholic tendencies, my difficulty accepting help, my fear of appearing needy or vulnerable, all stemmed from early lessons that my worth was tied to my independence and self-reliance. I began the slow process of unlearning these beliefs, practicing self-compassion, and setting healthier boundaries in all my relationships. Occasionally, news of my family filtered through to me via distant connections. A former high school classmate mentioned running into Jason at a local business function. He said your parents ended up taking out that school loan themselves, she told me during a catch-up call. Apparently they co-signed for your nephew's private school after all. The information brought a brief moment of vindication, followed by genuine sadness. The cycle continued unbroken. My parents were still overextending themselves to fulfill Jason's expectations, while he apparently remained dependent on their support well into his 30s. The dynamics hadn't changed in my absence, only the distribution of responsibility. My financial situation, meanwhile, had transformed completely. With my increased salary and no family obligations draining my resources, I had built substantial savings and made my first major investment, a modern townhouse overlooking Green Lake. The day I signed the closing papers, I remembered that moment in my Atlanta apartment when I had toasted myself after paying off my student loans. This milestone felt similar, but amplified another achievement earned entirely through my own efforts. That evening, walking through my empty new home before furniture delivery, I contemplated what real love and support should look like. If I ever had children of my own, how would I ensure they felt equally valued, equally supported, equally loved? I promised myself they would never question their worth based on financial investment, never have to earn basic parental support through academic achievement or career success. I had just settled into my new home when a surprising letter arrived, forwarded from my company address. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, childish, but careful. Inside was a note written on superhero stationery. Dear Aunt Kristen, my name is Tyler. I am 9 years old now. Mom showed me your picture and said you live far away. I am learning about family trees in school. Can you tell me about when you were a kid? My teacher says, everyone has a story. What is your story? From Tyler. The innocence of the letter caught me off guard. This child, caught in the middle of adult dynamics, he couldn't understand reaching out with simple curiosity about his aunt. He was not responsible for his father's entitlement or my parents' favoritism. After careful consideration, I responded with a brief age-appropriate letter about growing up in Ohio, my favorite subjects in school, and a few benign childhood memories. I included no return address, making it a one-time communication that wouldn't reopen wounds or create expectations. As my third year in Seattle approached, I found myself reflecting more deeply on the concept of family. The traditional definition, bound by blood and obligation, had brought me primarily pain and insecurity. But my chosen family, the friends who celebrated my successes without comparison and supported me through challenges without keeping score, had shown me what genuine connection could feel like. I realized that setting boundaries with my biological family wasn't selfish, as they had tried to make me believe. It was necessary self-preservation. Walking away from toxic relationships, even those society insists should be maintained at all costs, can be the most self-respectful choice. Some relationships simply cannot be balanced or healed. My parents would likely never acknowledge the fundamental unfairness of their parenting, never truly see the pain their favoritism had caused. Jason would probably never recognize his privileged position in our family hierarchy. Continuing to seek validation or fair treatment from them would only perpetuate my own suffering. The most profound peace came with accepting this reality and redirecting my energy toward relationships that reflected my true worth. Every time I hosted friends for dinner in my new home, every successful project I led at work, every morning, I woke up. Without the weight of familial expectation, I affirmed the rightness of my decision. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, but the bravest form of self-love. Sometimes the family we create means more than the family we were born into. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately set us free. As I look toward my future now, I see possibilities unbounded by others' expectations or limitations. I see a life defined by choices made from confidence rather than obligation, relationships based on mutual respect rather than DNA, and success measured by personal fulfillment rather than external validation. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have felt the sting of family favoritism or unfair expectations. Remember that your worth isn't determined by others' willingness to invest in you. You deserve equal love, equal support, and equal respect, particularly from those who claim to love you most. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family obligation and self-respect? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If my story touched something in you, please like and subscribe for more conversations about family dynamics, boundaries, and building a life on your own terms. Remember, sometimes the family we choose becomes more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth, whatever that journey might require.